The Ark had been buried for 2,500 years. The viewer perceived the Ark. The Ark was the same Ark before, during, and after his perception. What changed was that the perception had now occurred. The data had been recorded. The information had crossed from the hidden into the known. Welcome to the Reality Revolution. Today, I'm discussing a fascinating topic, Project Sunstreak, the secret program the CIA used to discover the Ark of the Covenant. And let me take you back, Fort Meade, Maryland, spring of 1988. A man sits alone in a small, dimly lit room inside one of the most secure military installations in the United States. On the table in front of him, a sealed envelope. Inside the envelope, a target he has no way to see. Geographic coordinates, a reference number, nothing else. The man is known to the program only as Remote Viewer 032. He has been trained by the Defense Intelligence Agency for one purpose: to extend his consciousness across distance and bring back information about objects, people, and locations no human eye has touched. His task this afternoon is to describe whatever sits at those coordinates. He has no idea what the target is. He has no idea what continent it sits on. The protocol forbids his handlers from telling him anything beyond the number on the envelope. He closes his eyes. He breathes. He drops into the state. And then he begins to speak. He describes a container. The container is made of wood, gold, and silver. The container has another container inside it. There are angels carved into the surface. The angels have 6 wings each. The shape is that of a coffin. The target is hidden. He says subterranean, dark, wet. His handlers sitting on the other side of a partition glance at each other. Then viewer 032 says something nobody in the room is prepared for. He says the target is protected. He says there are entities surrounding it. He says anyone who attempts unauthorized access will be destroyed by the protectors of the container. Then he pauses, and he says one more sentence. He says the purpose of this object is to bring people together. He said it has something to do with ceremony, memory, homage, the resurrection. He says there is an aspect of spiritual information and lessons and historical knowledge far beyond what we now know. His handlers open the envelope. The target Remote Viewer 032 has just described from inside a sealed room in Maryland with no information beyond a number is the Ark of the Covenant. What you just heard is real. The transcript exists. The session was conducted on December 5th, 1988. The viewer's responses were recorded, transcribed, and filed under a code name the United States government would keep classified for 12 years. The name of the program was Project Sunstreak. It was the 4th name in a continuous line of psychic intelligence operations stretching back to the early 70s. Gondola Wish, Grill Flame, Center Lane, Sunstreak, and finally the name that became famous in pop culture and survived in the public imagination long after the program itself was shut down, Stargate. For more than 2 decades, the United States Defense Intelligence Agency, the Central Intelligence Agency, Army Intelligence and Security Command, and the Air Force Technical Applications Center all participated in a single quiet experiment. The question they were trying to answer was simple. The implications of the answer would change everything. Could a human being sitting in a room with no sensory input extend their awareness across space and bring back accurate information about a distant object? The official position for decades was that the answer remained inconclusive. The unofficial position, contained inside thousands of pages of declassified session transcripts, is something else entirely. The remote viewers were locating Soviet submarines under the polar ice. They were drawing accurate schematics of secret facilities beyond the Iron Curtain. They were finding hostages held in basement cells in Beirut. They were describing the interiors of buildings they had no security clearance to enter. And then, in 1988, the program began turning its attention to a different category of target, beyond the military, beyond the strategic, something else. The viewers were being sent across distance, yes, but they were also being sent across time. They were being asked to perceive objects whose locations had been lost to history for 2,000, 3,000, in some cases tens of thousands of years. The Ark session was one of those sessions. It was filed, archived, declassified in 2000, and set largely unnoticed in the public record until very recently. When researchers finally pulled the documents back into the light, what they found was a sequence of transcripts that asks one of the most uncomfortable questions a person can ask. If consciousness can locate an object across the entire surface of the planet with no information, no signal, no instrumentation, then where's the boundary? What else can consciousness locate? To understand what happened in that room in 1988, you have to go back to the late summer of 1972. A man named Ingo Swann walks into the Stanford Research Institute in California. He is a New York artist. He's also a self-described psychic. He has spent years quietly developing an ability he believes any human being can train. Two physicists, Hal Puthoff and Russell Targ, have agreed to test him under laboratory conditions. They place him in a sealed room. They give him geographic coordinates. They ask him to describe what is there. Swann begins to draw. He describes a small island. He describes structures. He describes specific features of the topography that the researchers verify against classified maps. The accuracy is beyond anything chance could explain. Word reaches the CIA within months. By 1973, the agency is funding the work directly. By 1975, a small group of military personnel had been quietly transferred to Fort Meade, Maryland, to begin training under the Stanford protocols. The program goes through name after name each time the work is exposed, each time a congressional aide gets too curious. Each time a journalist starts asking questions, the program is renamed and reorganized. Gondola Wish becomes Grill Flame. Grill Flame becomes Center Lane. Center Lane becomes Sunstreak. Sunstreak becomes Stargate. The names change, the work continues. By the early 80s, the program has produced a roster of trained viewers who can sit down at a desk, receive a set of coordinates or a reference number, and produce descriptions, sketches, and intelligence data of operational value. Their hit rate runs high enough that the program survives every internal review, high enough that the CIA, DIA, and military intelligence agencies keep cutting checks for almost 20 years. One of those viewers was a man named Joseph McMoneagle. Another was Pat Price. Another, decades later, was the viewer assigned the number 032. The protocols were strict. The viewer was given nothing but a number. The handlers themselves were sometimes blinded to the target, ensuring no subtle cue could leak through. The viewers worked alone in dim rooms with paper and pencil. Shapes, colors, surfaces, materials, surroundings, atmospheres. What they brought back again and again was data that no rational pathway could find into their minds. A submarine under the ice cap, a downed Soviet bomber in the African jungle, a kidnapped general in a basement in Italy, a nuclear facility whose internal layout the viewer drew before any satellite image had ever confirmed the architecture. The remote viewers were doing the impossible, and then, somewhere in the late 80s, the program began to ask a question that would push the work past the limits of military intelligence and into territory no government had ever officially explored. If the viewers could find a Soviet submarine, could they find something older? Could they find something hidden for thousands of years? December 5th, 1988, Fort Meade, Maryland. The viewer enters the room at the assigned hour. He's been doing this work for years. He sits at a small wooden table. The handlers seal the envelope and place it face down in front of him. The protocol is called coordinate remote viewing. A specific viewer would also be trained in extended remote viewing, a deeper variant, taking the perceiver into longer, more detailed sessions where they enter sustained altered states and bring back hours of material across multiple drafts. The viewer takes a breath. He picks up his pencil. He begins. His first impressions arrive as raw sensations, a texture, a surface, a weight. He draws what he perceives. His handlers watch in silence. Then language begins to surface. He says he sees a container. He describes the dimensions. He describes the material composition, wood, with gold worked into the surface, with silver inlay. He says there are figures depicted on the exterior. He says the figures have wings. He says the wings number 6 per figure. He says there is another container nested within the first. The handlers say nothing. They've been trained to give no feedback. No nods, no frowns, no verbal cues. The viewer is alone with the target. He continues. He describes the environment surrounding the container. The space is enclosed, buried. There is dampness. There is darkness. He uses the word subterranean. He uses the word wet. He says the location is deliberately concealed. He says the concealment is ancient. And he says those who placed the object here intended it to remain hidden. Then he pauses. Something shifts in his perception. He begins to describe presences. He says there are entities in proximity to the object, something other than human, something beyond any biology he recognizes. He says these presences function as guardians. He says they are aware of him. He says they are aware of any attempt to approach. He says in the transcript that has survived, anyone attempting unauthorized access to this target will be destroyed by the protectors of the container. He sits with that for a moment. The handlers note the language. The session continues. He begins to describe purpose. This is unusual. Most remote viewing sessions stay at the level of physical description. What is its appearance? Where is it at? What surrounds it? The viewer is being drawn into something else. The viewer is beginning to perceive meaning. He says the purpose of this target is to bring people together. He said it has to do with ceremony, with memory, with homage, with resurrection. He says there's an aspect of spirituality here, information, lessons, historical knowledge, far beyond what we now know. To understand why this transcript matters, you have to understand what the Ark of the Covenant actually is. According to the Hebrew Bible, the Ark was constructed at the foot of Mount Sinai under the direct instruction of God. The plans were given to Moses in vision. The dimensions were precise. The materials were specific. Acacia wood overlaid with pure gold inside and out. On the lid, 2 cherubim were to be wrought of solid gold, their wings outstretched and meeting in the center. The book of Exodus describes the cherubim with detail. Other passages in the book of Ezekiel and the book of Revelation describe the higher order angels surrounding the divine presence as having 6 wings each. The viewer in Fort Meade in 1988 described the figures on the container as having 6 wings. The Ark was the most sacred object in ancient Israelite religion. It held the stone tablets of the 10 Commandments. It traveled with the Israelites through the wilderness. It was carried into battle. It went before the people through the parted waters of the Jordan. It rested in the inner sanctum of Solomon's temple in Jerusalem. And then somewhere around the destruction of the first temple by the Babylonians in 586 BCE, the Ark vanished from the historical record. It has been missing for 2,500 years. Theories about its fate are numerous. Some held that it was taken to Babylon. Some hold that it was hidden in the caves beneath the Temple Mount. Some hold that the prophet Jeremiah concealed it in a cave on Mount Nebo. Some hold that it was carried south to Ethiopia, where it sits to this day in a chapel in the city of Aksum, guarded by a single monk who never leaves the building and never speaks of what he protects. The Ethiopian tradition is one of the most cited by serious researchers. The Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion in Aksum has claimed possession of the Ark for centuries. The guardian monk is appointed for life. He is forbidden from leaving the compound. He is the only living person who has seen the object. According to the Ethiopian guardians, the Ark is housed inside a chapel that is dark, enclosed, and isolated, beneath ground level, surrounded by holy precincts, subterranean, dark. The viewer in Fort Meade said wet. He said the location was wet. A 1988 BBC investigation that visited Aksum reported that the chapel housing the alleged Ark sits in a low-lying compound where seasonal rains create persistent dampness in the lower chambers. Wet. The viewer was hundreds of miles from anyone who could give him cues. He had a number on an envelope. From that number in a sealed room, he produced a description matching the religious texts, the construction, specifications, the geographic conditions, and the protective tradition of an object hidden from the world for 2,500 years. The transcript exists. The documents have been declassified. You can read them today. Return to the strangest moment of the session. The viewer had been describing the object physically: container, wood, gold, silver, angels with 6 wings, coffin-shaped, subterranean, wet, guarded. Then his perception shifted into a category remote viewing protocols rarely produce, and that intelligence handlers had no use for, and that the program was never designed to gather. He began describing purpose. He said the purpose of this target is to bring people together. He said it has something to do with ceremony, memory, homage, resurrection, and there is an aspect of spirituality, information, lessons, and historical knowledge far beyond what we now know. The session transcript treats those sentences with the same neutrality as the descriptions of materials and dimensions. The viewer was reporting what he perceived. The handlers were recording. There was no interpretation in the room. But sit with that. A trained remote viewer, blind to the target, working under one of the most rigorous psychic intelligence protocols ever developed by a national government, was perceiving the Ark of the Covenant as something with a function beyond historical artifact. He was perceiving it as something with an active purpose. He was using the language of ceremony. He was using the language of resurrection. The Ark in the Hebrew tradition was the meeting place between the human and the divine. The space above the cover of the Ark, between the wings of the cherubim, was the seat of God on earth. The Ark was where heaven and earth touched. It was where the priest could approach the source of all things and receive guidance. The viewer was describing it functioning as that, still in whatever chamber it sits concealed within today. He was perceiving the object as active, a meeting place between dimensions, a point where ceremony and memory and historical knowledge converge, a resurrection technology. That word is the one that stops everything. The viewer used it without prompting. He was sitting in a sealed room in Maryland. He had no religious context fed to him, no theological framing, and from that, his consciousness brought back the description of an object whose purpose is the resurrection. This is what the program was producing in 1988. This is the data sitting in declassified files that the intelligence community was funding for 20 years. The viewer did one more thing before the session ended. He drew the object. The drawing matches the construction specifications of the Ark of the Covenant as described in Exodus chapter 25, written approximately 3,000 years ago. 3,000 years of religious tradition, 20 years of psychic intelligence research, one sealed envelope, one trained perceiver, one transcript, and a description of an active resurrection device. Hidden in a wet subterranean chamber, guarded by entities the viewer described as protectors of the container. The Ark session was one of many. Once you understand what Sunstreak was doing in its final years, the Ark transcript stops looking as an isolated curiosity. The program was tasking remote viewers against targets that should have been impossible, and the viewers were producing data. In 1984, a viewer was given a coordinate corresponding to Mars, approximately 1 million years in the past. The viewer described tall, thin humanoid figures wearing one-piece suits, pyramidal structures, massive obelisks, an atmosphere thinning under environmental collapse, beings who appeared to be in a state of survival, attempting to maintain civilization on a dying world. The viewer, Joseph McMoneagle, had no idea what the target was. The session was conducted under the standard double-blind protocol. The coordinates on the envelope referenced a specific location on Mars and a specific date in deep prehistory. What McMoneagle described aligns with later observations from the Cydonia region of Mars, the so-called face, the surrounding pyramidal mounds, the the geometric anomalies NASA has been slowly cataloging for decades. Other sessions targeted Atlantis. Viewers described the geographical location, the architecture, the cause of the destruction. Their descriptions converged on details no individual viewer could have known from the others. A session targeted the interior of a UFO. The viewer described curved walls, panels of unfamiliar material, beings of small stature with elongated heads and large eyes. A session targeted a hostage held in a foreign prison. The viewer drew the layout of the cell, the position of the hostage, the items in the room, the guard rotation outside the door. Another session targeted a missing nuclear weapon. The viewer indicated the geographic region. Weeks later, intelligence confirmed the weapon had been moved through that exact corridor. Another session targeted Terry Waite, the Church of England envoy taken hostage in Beirut on January 20th, 1987. Waite was held in solitary confinement for nearly 5 years. During his captivity, a Sunstreak viewer was tasked with locating him and describing his condition. The session produced enough operational detail that the intelligence community considered remote viewing program a utility tool worth continued funding. Another session targeted a downed Soviet Tu-22 bomber that had crashed in a dense jungle terrain in Zaire. The official search teams had been unable to locate the wreckage. A remote viewer working from a sealed reference number sketched a topographic map of a specific river bend with the aircraft positioned along the eastern bank. Recovery teams went to the exact coordinates indicated. The bomber was there. A session targeted an American hostage being held by Hezbollah in Lebanon. The viewer described the building, the room, the orientation of the captives, the bed, position of the guards. President Jimmy Carter, in a 1995 speech at Emory University, publicly acknowledged that the United States had used remote viewers to gather intelligence on the Iran hostage crisis. He spoke of the program with a matter-of-fact tone of a man who had read the briefings. Session after session, year after year, targets ranging from the operational to the historical to the metaphysical, and the viewers kept producing data. Some of it was vague. Some of it was wrong. The program was honest about its hit rate, which hovered somewhere around 20% above chance under normal controlled conditions, with the best viewers producing significantly more viewer data than the average. But the percentage is almost beside the point. The fact that the percentage was greater than zero, sustained over decades, validated by independent reviewers and applied operationally by multiple intelligence agencies is the entire story. Consciousness, under the right conditions, can extend across distance. Consciousness can describe what it has no rational way to know. Consciousness can locate the hidden. The Ark session is one of dozens. Mars is one of the dozens. Hostage rescues, submarine locations, nuclear tracking, the impossible historical retrievals, all of it sits in the same archive. All of it points to the same conclusion. The official program was shut down in 1995. The American Institutes for Research produced an evaluation concluding the work was useful but inconsistent and recommended termination. The program ended on paper. What happened to the trained viewers? The protocols, the operational lesson, the decades of accumulated knowledge is a question the public record leaves open. What we do have is the transcripts, the data, the proof, in declassified ink, that a national intelligence agency spent 20 years confirming human consciousness can reach across the planet and bring back whatever is hidden. Now we ask the question the Sunstreak program never had the institutional courage to fully pursue. If consciousness can reach across distance, can it reach across time? The viewers were already doing both. The Mars session targeted a moment 1 million years in the past. The Atlantis sessions targeted a civilization that ended approximately 12,000 years ago. The Ark session targeted an object constructed 3,000 years ago and hidden 2,500 years ago. In every case, the viewer's consciousness traveled across distance to a location and across time to a moment and brought back perception. The remote viewers were time travelers. The program was running quietly inside the United States Defense Intelligence Agency, and the technology being used was the trained awareness of a single human mind. Now turn it. If your consciousness can extend backwards across time to perceive an object hidden 3,000 years ago, what stops it from extending forward across time to perceive an event that is yet to occur? Nothing stops it. The barriers are conceptual rather than structural. The viewers themselves discovered this. The Sunstreak files include sessions where viewers were tasked with predicting future events. The technique was called associative remote viewing. The viewer would be asked to describe an image associated with a future outcome without knowing what the outcome represented. The results in some categories were statistically significant enough that some viewers used the techniques to predict commodity market movements with documented profit. Stephen Schwartz, one of the original SRI researchers, has documented decades of precognitive remote viewing experiments. Russell Targ, after leaving SRI, conducted further work on the temporal aspects of consciousness. The data converges on a conclusion. The program quietly acknowledged but rarely emphasized in public. The same faculty allowing a viewer to perceive a hidden artifact in a buried chamber allows the viewer to perceive a future event in a moment that is yet to arrive. Space presents no boundary to consciousness. Time presents none either. The Ark sits underground in Aksum or wherever it sits, and the viewer reaches it. Your future life sits in a moment that is yet to arrive, one of many possible future lives. And this same faculty can reach towards specific ones. This is the bridge. This is what the declassified files are actually telling you. Once you stop reading them as historical curiosities and reading them as an instruction manual, the remote viewer who described the Ark was using a capacity living inside every human nervous system. The training is technique. The faculty is innate. You have it. You've always had it. The question is whether you have been using it consciously or whether your perception of your own future has been arriving as accident, intuition, as the dreams you forget on waking, as the quiet knowing you dismiss before it has time to form. The same consciousness that found the Ark can find your life. The same consciousness that perceived a coffin-shaped container in a wet chamber can perceive the room you will be standing in 5 years from now. The clothes you will be wearing, the work you will be doing, the relationships present, the financial reality you will be inside, the body you will inhabit. The Sunstreak program proved that the faculty is real. And the same faculty lives untrained, undeveloped, inside the awareness of every person hearing this. This is where the work begins. The Sunstreak viewers had a protocol. They sat in a sealed room. They were given a reference. They quieted the mind. They allowed a perception to arrive without analysis. They sketched what came. They reported what surfaced. The protocol is simple enough that anyone can run it. The training accelerates this process. The training is also unnecessary for the basic faculty to begin operating. You can do this tonight. Sit somewhere quiet. Close your eyes. Bring to mind a single reference yourself 5 years from now on an ordinary afternoon. You are giving your consciousness coordinates. The coordinate is a moment in time that is yet to arrive. You are doing what remote viewer 032 did, except your target is your own life. Allow what arrives. You may receive an image, a feeling, a fragment of sound, a sense of weight, a knowledge. You may receive language. You may receive a sense of atmosphere. Whatever arrives, record it. Sketch it if you wish. Speak it into a recorder. Write it down in a small notebook reserved for this purpose. Do this just for a few minutes a day. Within weeks, the data will begin to organize. Within months, perceptions will sharpen. The future you have been reaching for through hope, through effort, through manifestation, through the slow grinding work of intention begins to clarify in a different way. You are perceiving it. You are receiving information from it. You are establishing contact with a version of yourself already existing in the same way the Ark exists already, in a location your ordinary senses have no way to reach. The future self is the coordinate. This is the integration of two strands of work running parallel for 50 years and rarely brought together. The remote viewing tradition gave us the protocols. The manifestation tradition gave us the framing. The remote viewing tradition validated the faculty under laboratory conditions and operational deployment. The manifestation tradition explained why the faculty works and what it produces when used consciously. Neville Goddard wrote decades before the Sunstreak program was funded that imagination creates reality. He was describing the same faculty using a different language. Zeland writes that consciousness selects from a field of pre-existing variations. The remote viewers selected from that same field, but they selected past locations and present hidden targets rather than future variants of their own lives. The Law of One transmissions channeled in the same window of years Sunstreak was operational describe consciousness as the primary fabric of reality, with perception being the act of focusing awareness on one variant or another from the infinite field. All of these frameworks describe the same human capacity. The Sunstreak files give you the empirical proof. The transcripts are public. The protocols are documented. The training was real. The data was operational. What you have been calling intuition is one expression of this faculty. What you've been calling premonition is another expression. What you've been calling vivid dreams is another. What you've been calling sudden knowing or the sudden feeling about something that is about to happen, the awareness of who is on the other end of the phone before you answer, the sense of a person's presence in a room you have yet to enter. All of it is the same faculty operating at a low power, untrained and episodic. The Sunstreak protocol turned that faculty into a tool. You can do the same. Your target is your own future life. The viewer in 1988 found the Ark. He did so without leaving Fort Meade, without crossing the ocean or entering a temple, negotiating with the guardian of the chapel, or security clearance from a national government. He found the Ark by closing his eyes and allowing his consciousness to extend. The Ark was already located. The Ark had been buried for 2,500 years. The viewer's task was perception, never transportation. He never moved. The Ark never moved. What changed was the relationship between his awareness and the location of the artifact. This is the principle operating inside every act of conscious reality creation. Your future life is already located. The work has nothing to do with constructing it from scratch through effort. The work has everything to do with extending your awareness to the location where it already exists, perceiving it with clarity, and allowing that perception to inform the choices, actions, and frequency, the identity you carry through each ordinary day. The viewer perceived the Ark. The Ark was the same Ark before, during, and after his perception. What changed was that the perception had now occurred. The data had been recorded. The information had crossed from the hidden into the known. Your future life is the Ark. You are viewer 032. The coordinate is the moment you wish to perceive. The sealed envelope is your decision to commit this work. The training is consistency. The protocol is simple. The faculty is already inside you, operating, producing data through dreams and intuitions and moments of sudden clarity, and through your own act of visualization, where you tune in to the reality of your choice that you might have been dismissing your entire life. The Sunstreak program ended in 1995. The protocols survived. The training methods are available in books, courses, surviving lectures of the men and women who built the program. What was once classified is now public. What was once funded by black budgets and protected by clearance is now accessible to anyone with willingness to sit in a quiet room and allow consciousness to extend. Consider what this means about the nature of the universe you've been moving through. Every object in existence has a location. Every event has a coordinate. Every version of yourself across every possible future has an address in the field of variations. The Sunstreak program proved, under the most rigorous evidentiary standards a government applies to anything, that a trained human awareness can extend to those addresses and bring back data. The implications collapse the entire structure of what most people believe about consciousness. Your awareness has no containment within your skull. Your awareness has access to information your senses have never gathered. The boundaries you have been told define the human experience are conventions of training, of culture, of the slow inheritance of materialist philosophy, teaching you to dismiss your own perception as fantasy. These Sunstreak files are receipts. The receipts say the perception was real, operational, and it continued for 20 years. There's probably so much more we don't know. And it's my strong belief this operation continued into the present day. The Ark was found in 1988 by a man in a sealed room working from a number on an envelope. Your future life can be found in the same way. By you, tonight. With a notebook in a quiet room and the willingness to ask your own consciousness to extend to a coordinate that has been waiting for your perception since long before you were born. The faculty is real. Your future is the next coordinate. One more piece of the transcript is worth holding in awareness. The viewers, after describing the Ark, after describing the Guardians, said something operates as a thread to pull. He said the purpose of the object includes information, lessons, and historical knowledge far beyond what we now know. That sentence is doing more work than it appears to do in the first reading. He's saying the Ark contains information, that information is preserved, and that information exceeds what humanity has access to. The Ark, in the viewer's perception, is an active repository, a storage device, a meeting place where the historical and the eternal converge, where knowledge from earlier states of human civilization is held in trust, where the resurrection is possible because the data needed for the resurrection has been preserved across the silent millennia. Whether the artifact in Aksum is physically the Ark of Moses, or whether the viewer was perceiving the broader symbolic field around the concept of the Ark is a question for theologians and historians. What concerns you, what concerns this transmission is the deeper principle. Information persists. The Ark persists. The data persists. And who you are becoming persists. In a field the trained perceiver can access. You're also an Ark. You're also a container holding wood and gold and silver, a coffin shape. Inside you is the information of every life you've lived. Inside you is the data of every variant of yourself existing across every available timeline. Inside you is the historical knowledge of where you've been and the future knowledge of where you are going, both held in a quiet chamber. Remote viewer 032 closed his eyes and reached across the planet and found the Ark in its hiding place. You can close your eyes and reach across time and find yourself in the hiding place where your future already exists, fully formed, waiting for perception to make it known. This is the work, the inheritance of a 20-year intelligence program proving with rigor and replication that human consciousness has access to information classical physics insists should be unreachable. The CIA found the Ark of the Covenant through consciousness. You can find your life through the same faculty. Sit quietly tonight. Bring to mind the coordinates. Allow what arrives. Record what you perceive. The faculty is yours. The training is your own consistency. The Ark of your own future is waiting in a chamber that has always been within reach of the awareness you have always carried. The session begins when you say it begins. The viewer is you. Now, before we go, I invite you to join the Reality Revolution community, where I have a deep teaching on remote viewing, where I take this deeper and I share in my group specific techniques that you can use to become an advanced remote viewer. In addition to that, I have several future self-trainings and other trainings that you can only find in my group. You can find the link in the description at www.skool.com, skool.com/Reality Revolution. Sending all my light and love to everyone listening, and welcome to the Reality Revolution. There's a version of your life where everything you've been reaching for arrives, where the money flows, where love opens, where your body heals, where every step carries the frequency of the self you were always meant to be. That life exists, and the path to it has been 8 years in the making. This July, the Reality Revolution comes home to Anaheim. 3 full days of teaching, meditation, and timeline activation. 9 complete sessions designed to move you from the life you're living to the life that is waiting. Activate your pineal gland. Meet your higher self. Quantum jump into your greatest timeline. Enter the bliss body healing state. Step into the flow of large sums of money. Open fully to love. Shift into a higher density new earth. Friday night, the community celebrates together. Saturday evening, a special appearance from Daryl Anka. And by Sunday evening, you walk out as the version of yourself your future self has been waiting for.
I knew I had to be in the room because it's different from like listening to the meditation videos online.
It was really getting into yourself and how you feel and your timelines.
It's time at the event, and it really is. It's wonderful. So I would highly recommend to anyone, if you get the opportunity to do it, absolutely do it. It really is amazing.
The Reality Revolution live in Anaheim, July 24th, 25th, and 26th at the Hilton Anaheim. 3 days that will change the trajectory of your life. Early bird pricing is available now. Claim your seat at www.brianscottlive.com/Anaheim.